name is Devja. I am a program manager at Google. I've been on this team for 6 years. Fun fact, my first day was at a Geo for Good. So I was once an attendee like you, just soaking all of the information in. But yeah, no, it's an exciting time. This is probably going to be one of the easiest sessions you attend today. So you're going to walk away knowing everything that you need to know about my maps to get started. So the session is really about easy map making. You can go from data to a map in just under a couple of minutes. We have two amazing TAs in the room, Justin and Kaushik, who are going to be helping you through the session if you ever get stuck. We will save some time for Q&A at the end, but if at any point you want me to repeat anything or you have more questions, feel free to raise your hand. So the agenda for today, we're going to give you a quick overview of my maps. A quick show of hands, how many of you have never used my maps before? Okay, we have quite a few beginners. Okay, so 1 to 3 is going to be familiar to folks who've already taken my maps class before, so bear with me. But we are going to dive into some advanced features, teaching you how to update your data sets, especially if you work with data that frequently gets updated or forms that keep changing. We will show you how to add and replace data sets without losing styling. We're also going to show you how you can merge data sets. So let's say if you collect ground data, but you also have data sources available online that you want to import into your map to contextualize the data that you've collected. We're going to show you how to do that and also show you how to bring in data from this amazing source called Data Commons. Did any of you, by any chance, attend the Data Commons session before? Okay, a few of you. Okay, great. But it's super easy to use. It's okay if you've not been to the session. We'll show you how to bring in your data. Okay, so we can start with a quick overview of My Maps. Like I mentioned, Google My Maps is a simple and easy map making tool. If you deal with data where, if you deal with data that you want to quickly organize or convert into a spatial element because it naturally makes more sense to read it or analyze it that way, My Maps is the tool for you. You don't need to know how to code. You don't need any knowledge of GIS or mapping file formats. You can pretty much be a beginner and you can make a map very easily. And the thing I love about My Maps the most is that it takes the familiar interface of Google Maps, which all of you have pretty much used on a day-to-day basis, and gives you a way to pretty much make your custom Google Maps. So with My Maps, you can add data points, you can bring in your own data, or you can search for locations and add your own points to the map. You can also connect locations, add shapes. You can make your map visually more informative by adding photos and videos to the place marks. And you can import data from either spreadsheets or KML files. My Maps helps you make maps that are simple and beautiful and easy to use. You can take your maps with you on the go. A lot of people know this, but the maps that you create on My Maps are linked to your Google account, which means that if you're signed into the same account on Google Maps on your phone, you can actually pull up those maps and use them on the field. Or maybe you have a My Map of restaurants that you want to share with your friends. You can actually do that very easily, and they can open it up on their phone. And last but not the least, we know that a lot of you want to make authoritative information available more widely. It is super easy to embed My Maps on your website and share your information maybe during a crisis when you want to highlight emergency locations. You can very easily put that either on social media as a map link or like embed it on your site and point people to your website. My Maps is also one of the most collaborative mapping tools you will ever find. It works pretty much just like any other Google Drive or Google Workspace file. You can share, you can add collaborators, you can limit access settings, you can make it as publicly viewable as you want, or you can keep it to your organization only. Okay, so the first part of our hands-on today, we're going to learn how to add points to the map and draw on the map. Just get you familiar with the map interface, show you how to change layers, experiment with different styles. Then we're going to start making the map more richer. We'll show you how to add media content to your map. Then we'll teach you how to style your data sets and bring in your own data. The last is we'll teach you how to share your map. Okay. So for the sake of this example, we are going to assume that we work at a nonprofit that is running a tree plantation drive, and we're sending out a form to participants to join this tree plantation initiative. So we're going to, like I mentioned in the previous slide, we're going to cover pretty much the basics. We're going to use this example as a way to build data onto our map and just make it a little more fun and a little more contextual. So if everyone could just go to this link and open the tutorial document for me. And if you have any trouble accessing the document, we have TAs who could help you. Just raise your hand and they can come help you. Is there anybody who doesn't have the tutorial doc open? Okay, one person. Okay, we'll wait. Do you have the link? Or, okay, typing it up. Okay, good. What I'm going to do is I'm going to switch. So we're going to go to My Maps, create a new map. And just so you know, this is the folder where we're going to pull in spreadsheets and all of the files that we need for our demo today from. So I think all of you should have access, but let us know in case you don't. Okay, so this is pretty much the basic interface of Google My Maps, some super quick functionalities. This is how you add a place mark. We are going to search for Bayview. Events Center. Actually, maybe. Going to search for Google Bayview. That's the campus right beside the event center. We're going to add it to map. So this is one way you can add place marks. You can pretty much just search and add a location. The other way to do it is by manually moving around the map. You can click on this add marker interface and add a place mark. So we're going to call this the event center. And that's it. You've added your first couple of place marks. Okay. So what I'm going to show you next is how to change the base map. This is the standard default map that you see, which is a standard Google satellite view. You can use, as a standard Google map view. You can switch to satellite view so that you can also see the locations more clearly. There are also a few other color schemes that you can explore with. There's also certain map types that highlight specific attributes more prominently, such as the terrain map, if terrain data is important to you. We're going to stick with satellite data for our example. And next, we're going to give our map a name. So just go into the tutorial document, copy the title text. Sorry, I'm just going to go back. So the way you edit the title is you click on title map. And you add a name. We're going to call it Tree at Your Door Initiative. You can also give it a brief description. So this is the title and description that shows up on your map when you make it public or make it publish, when you publish it. So basically you can think of the description. Let's say if you're making like a disaster response map, you can use it as a way to let people know what this map is for. Yep. Is everybody following till now? Okay. So then now we're going to practice adding a line. Okay. So what we're gonna do is we're going to try to draw a boundary of this little lake. I know in the tutorial it says draw a line around Shoreline Boulevard, but yeah, we're just gonna practice. So the way that you add a line is you click on, I'm gonna show it again, you click on the polygon looking icon. You can add line or shape. A fun thing to try out is if you have locations, and if, let's say, you want to show people how to get from a certain location to another, you can also add directions. So the other three options, add a driving route, biking route, or a walking route, gives specific routes or specific location, specific directions between two locations. Okay, so we're going to draw a boundary around the lake, and the difference between a line and a boundary is when you close the last button, it becomes a polygon, and we're going to call it the Bayview Lake. We can also change the transparency. So we can make it opaque, we can change the color, we can also adjust the border. And another neat thing that this does is that it automatically calculates both the perimeter and the area. So let's say if you actually want to, if you have like multiple water bodies or farmlands that you want to include in your map, you can either manually draw them or you can import polygons as well. And what Google My Maps will do is whenever you click on each of these, it will automatically give you the area and the perimeter for each of these bodies. Okay. That's how you do a polygon, and then we're just gonna do a simple line, but it's pretty much the same as what you saw before. Just that you end on the same point so that you get a line. Connector. There you go. That's our first My Map. Okay. Now I'm going to show you a few quick things about how you can publish your map and how you can share it. So in order to share your map, you can add editors just the way you would with any other Google Doc. I am going to share this with Justine and make her an editor. You can also change settings. I am logged into my corporate account, so there's going to be limits on what I can do here, but you can, you can basically also disable the option to download and print. A lot of folks, when they upload their My Maps, they're afraid of people downloading their raw data, especially when it comes to like ward settlements or sensitive data like health data. You can actually disable the option for people to download any raw information. That was something we introduced last year, actually. And I am also going to show you a quick preview of your map. So if you remember, this is our title. The author of the map also shows up here on the top. So basically, if you're a nonprofit or if you're a disaster responder and you have an authoritative map, we recommend that you use your organization's account so that people can identify or see who has created this map, and they can basically trust the map more, trust that it comes from an authoritative source. And this is the description. Users also have the option to switch between layers, and basically, if you have multiple layers, you can sort of switch between them, and the user has the option to choose what information they want to see. Okay, I am also going to show how you can embed on your site. I think this, I might just bear with me for a second. Just to show you how to make it public, I am going to switch. So I am going to copy the map. So now that the map is public, and I'll just show you quickly again. Anyone with this link can view. I'm not going to make it publicly searchable on the internet yet, but that is also an option. This basically means that your map is public. If you want to make it a crowdsourced map, you can also give anybody edit access, which I would not recommend doing for most maps, but that option is also available. Now that you made your map public, you can click on Embed on my site, which gives you the option to publish your map on your website. But like I said, remember to make your map public, so anyone with the link can access is how you make it public, so that you can publish it. And that's it. That's a public map. Yeah, this is pretty much, there are also options to print a map, but we'll not go into that. Okay. Sorry, I'm just gonna, okay. Yes?
How can we change the unit, like instead of feet, meters?
Let me check, that's a good question. I don't know if it's possible. I've actually never tried that. actually don't know of a way to do it. I don't know, Justine, if you're aware. Yeah, maybe we could, that's a good question for product, but at least I'm not aware of any way to change it. Oh, the question was, how do you change the units of the area or the perimeter or whatever you measure? Like, can it be square meters instead of miles? Yeah, that's a good, yeah. Yeah, it could be linked to your Google Maps account. That was going to be my next. Yeah. Yeah. So it could be linked to whatever settings you have on Google Maps. It just uses the same ones. So if you go to Google Maps and change your settings, hopefully it should update. Okay. Just gonna go back to the tutorial. Okay, so we're going to now style our data. You can click on the image on step 11 and download it. So the way that you style your icons is you click on this paint button and you can change the color. There's a lot of pre-populated icon options as well. So for most common like landmarks or places of interest, you'll see a relevant icon, like there's one for cycling, there's one for house. So most of the times you should be covered in the data with the database of existing icons, but there are a lot of times, let's say if you're creating a map of all of the places where your nonprofit works or where you have offices and you may need a custom icon or you may want to use your nonprofit's logo, which is what we're trying to do here, you can actually import your own logo as well. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to click on custom icon and we're going to use this. So yeah, that's how you add a custom icon. We're also going to add a photo to the event center. So you can click on the image, download it. And you click, there's two ways. You can either just click on the edit icon or you can directly click on add image or video. So click on the icon, click on add image or video. You can also use images from a Google search. Or you can upload an image like we did. And there you go. Yes.
So what image formats does it let you import? Because I'm trying to just import a JPEG from my hard drive and they're grayed out. It's not recognizing anything.
It should work. Is the file too big? Because there are limits to the size. Yeah. Yeah, so I can just quickly show the size limits. I think, actually I'm not sure about the, yeah, JPEG is supported, but I don't know if there's an image limit, like a size limit on the images. No, yeah. Okay. We're gonna keep moving. Okay, so that was a super quick tutorial on how to add a simple place mark, how to style your data, how to add images. It's honestly super straightforward. There are also these cool features that we're going to explore in the next tutorial, which is you can bring in data directly from your forms into My Maps. So because My Maps works so well with spreadsheets, the easiest workflow to bring your field data or data that you collect for your organization into My Maps is by using Google Forms. Google Forms stores the data in a spreadsheet. You can directly import that data, either via spreadsheet or as a CSV or an Excel file if you want to clean up your data before. And you can create a My Map within a couple of minutes. The only requirement that we have is that the form that collects data at least has one field that contains map information, so it doesn't have to be a lat long. It can be either a place mark, it can be an address, it can be a state, it can be a city. Pretty much any address that's readable in Google Maps should be enough to create a map out of. The only caveat is that, of course, if your address is very, very ambiguous, then it may not pick up or recognize the address. But for most addresses, it should be fine. And then, yeah, we did a quick demo of how to embed your My Map on your web page. Again, like if you're a nonprofit who needs to share authoritative information or just share your information more widely, either with like donors or as a public report or just for awareness, this is a very useful feature to promote your initiative or even talk about the work that you do by using a map-based format. The last, and we touched upon this a bit earlier, is the ability to add attribution. So again, if you use a nonprofit account, you can have your own logo and your own organization title that shows up on maps. You can also change the colors of the headers. We know that this is something that if you're very particular about the styling for your website and you want to match with your website's color scheme, it's something that's important to you, or even for accessibility in a lot of cases. So there is the ability to change the colors for the maps. There's also some other interesting features that we launched last year at Geo for Good, which is the ability to add timestamps. Again, when you're sharing information during disasters or you're sharing, let's say, information during COVID, where people want to know how fresh this data is and when was this last updated, timestamps becomes a really useful way of letting people know when the map was last refreshed or updated. There's also active work to just make My Maps more compatible with other file formats. So you can now export to CSV and not just import to CSV. There's also support for WKT geometry, so you can pretty much create a simple map in My Maps, but take it over to other platforms. You can also bring in data from other platforms more easily through these features. And lastly, if you need to work with 3D data, if you need to look at terrains, if you need to look at places with different elevation, you can actually take your My Maps data into Google Earth and view your My Maps in 3D. That is something that a lot of folks had been asking for. And yeah, last year we launched the option to do that as well. Somebody was asking about like limits and supported file types. We support CSV, TSV, Google Sheets, Excel. You can also import KML, KMZ. You can also, funnily, just import Google photo albums because they have location data stored in them. If you had location history turned on when you were taking the photos, so you can actually just pretty much import a photo album and have a map made right there, especially if you're traveling and you just want a nice like photo log of all the places that you went to. You should try doing that. Like I mentioned, for any my map to actually be created, you need at least 2 columns. You need a column with location data, and you need something to title the place marks. But that being said, there are pretty generous limits on how much data you can import, and there's up to 10,000 features that can be contained in each map. Okay, so how are nonprofits around the world using my maps? We've seen my maps being used by a variety of different groups. It's not just for crisis. Crisis is one of our biggest use cases, but we've seen folks use it for advocacy, for oral history, and for documenting traditional knowledge. During COVID, My Maps was one of the most widely used tools to crowdsource information on what shops are open, what hospitals are open, where are vaccine centers available, and really sort of make it available in a simple, easy to use, familiar format, so that any layperson can access the information easily and know how to navigate to those locations. And some of the cool examples that I wanted to quickly call out here is this map made by Cultural Survival, which documented the impacts of COVID on Indigenous people. So these were a lot of cases that were documented by this nonprofit. It includes human rights violations and COVID cases that the nonprofit had actively surveyed and collected among the community, and it showed, sort of the wide presence of these issues across different locations within the region, and it was a very helpful way to build awareness on the issues faced by the community. There was also an interesting crisis map where a disaster authority used a My Map to highlight evacuation orders during wildfires, and it also had photos from wildfire cameras, if I'm not mistaken, giving actual data from spots on the ground, so that you can actually see how the wildfires are progressing. And then lastly, this is really to advance storytelling. So there is this nonprofit that covered stories of discrimination in order to sort of sensitize youth to the different types of discrimination that happened across different countries, and featuring stories of either experts or people who have studied discrimination, as well as sort of worked on projects to address these issues, and it's a nice sort of documentary style map where it really collects all of these different stories and puts them in a nice map for people to sort of view on their own and engage with on their own. And yeah, this is basically a map that was used by a nonprofit to mark sort of nutrition meals that were provided to elderly during the pandemic. Again, this is a nice way to sort of document all of the areas that this nonprofit serviced and impacted through their program. Okay. So next, we're going to talk about advanced features. This was pretty much sort of the basic 101 of My Maps. When I say advanced features, these are still relatively easier to use. But what I also mean is that not everybody may want to use it or may find a use case for these features right off the bat. But nonetheless, it's good to know, especially when you start bringing in more data sets and start getting a little more advanced in your use of My Maps. So the 3 quick things that I'm going to cover today in this section are: how can you add items, how can you update items, how can you replace items. So these features basically help you retain your data without losing its styling, but you can essentially think of it as an evolving database. So add items basically helps add vertical data sets. Let's say your database remains the same, but you you have a form that keeps collecting new data every day. There are volunteers out on the field who are adding new data points, but the fields pretty much stay the same. So you can use this feature if you have new data coming in every day. Update items is basically, let's say you did a survey this week, but you're collecting new data points next week, or you're replacing some of the data that you're collecting with new data sets, with new data fields. Then you can use the update items feature to add new data attributes. Let's say you did a health survey on malaria today. Next week, you also want to include dengue as one of the input parameters. You can easily do that using update items. And lastly, replace items is, let's say you just want to replace your entire data set, but you put in a lot of effort into styling it and creating the map. You can easily use it. Okay, so what are some common use cases for these features? The first one is, like I mentioned, if you are collecting data on a daily basis, and if you don't want to invest too much time into styling or building your map, you just want your map to run on autopilot and keep updating every day, these are good features to use. If you have specific styling needs, if you've spent a lot of data picking the right colors and icons, and making sure that you have the right buckets, this is a good feature to again update your data set without using the styling. If you have maps that keep changing or keep growing, if you need to collect different features every now and then. And then last but not the least is if you work with multiple data sets, if you need to combine 2 or more data sets, if you need to merge and sort of join them based on a common parameter, then this is a really helpful way to basically mash up your data sets. Okay, so it is time for our next tutorial. Since we have a set, what we did before this exercise is we circulated a form and we had people sign up to participate in the tree plantation drive. We firstly want to see how many people have signed up, and then next we're going to do a quick status update to see how these trees have actually performed in the field, whether we've seen these trees grow or not. And that's how we're going to update our database with what's happened with the trees. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to go back into the tutorial sheet. Let's go to my maps. Okay, I think this link might not be working, or maybe it opens in a... Just gonna give it a simple title, call it tree updates. And this is our spreadsheet, basically. So this is the new spreadsheet that we're going to upload. Before that, we're actually going to import this spreadsheet. So if you go back to tutorial number 1 and you go to step 9, there should be an interest form. So this is the original form that we shared just to have people sign up to participate in a tree plantation drive. What we're going to do is we're going to click on import. We're going to click on Google Drive, recent, and we'll do interest. So what we're going to do is we will click address. That is the column that we use to position our place marks. This is our location column. We're going to title the place marks using name. And now we have a simple map of the data that we collected using a Google form. As you can see, you have all of the fields. You have the timestamp. You have the email address, phone number, address. And again, you can style and edit each of these data points, and it should get saved automatically. So this is our base map. And what we're going to do now is we have this updated form that was sent out where we actually asked the same people whether they planted their tree, what date they planted their tree, and we asked them to upload a photo as evidence of them planting the tree. So we're going to go in here now. We're going to click on re-import and merge. We're going to click on re-import and click on update matching items. We will click on Google Drive. We will do participation. So what it's going to ask you is it's going to ask you to match your locations. So what we can do is we can click address. And we can click finish. And you can basically see that all of the place marks have been updated. So you can actually see if they planted their tree, what date, and you can also have the photo ready. Okay. So I can also quickly show you some of the other options. So add more items is what I mentioned earlier, is if you just want to add new data records. So if you think of this table, and if you just want to add new entries, you don't want to change any of the columns, basically you just want to add more rows of data, you can use the add more, re-import and merge, add more items to add new data. You can also click on replace all items to basically update all of the existing data that was in this table. Yeah. And what we're going to do next is we are going to style the data. So an interesting thing that you can do is you can also do some quick like data parameters, or you can get like some quick data insights just by styling the places. So let's say if you click on group places by did you plant your tree, it basically divides your data into the options available. So you can very easily see what places planted the data versus what didn't. So there are these like simple tricks where you can click on a category and you can basically cluster your data into different groups. And we're going to try some more of that in the next tutorial as well. Okay. Okay. So just a quick recap of the steps that we did. Yeah, I think it's pretty straightforward. We learned about re-import and merge. You must match the columns. So you can use place mark ideally, but if there are like other columns in common, that is basically what the feature is going to use to match or merge the two data sets. So you need at least one column in common with the new data set that you're adding into the spreadsheet. And next, we're going to look at merge data sets. this is where we're going to quickly sort of talk about data commons. So data commons is this initiative to bring all of the data that's out in the open source domain. It's kind of like a big database of all of the open data available out there. It is sort of clustered by location, so you can pretty much go to the website, you can search for a location, and then you can see what type of data sets are available. So they have a lot of variables around crisis data. They have a lot of data around sort of socioeconomic variables. You can get population data. You can get sort of census data. And basically, this is a great database for looking up any sort of public data or basically any access to any authoritative data or official data that you might want to use in your project along with data that you collect. And this is just a quick sort of sample of the map viewer. Like I mentioned, you can pick a country or you can pick a region or state. You can pick a variable, like for example here, you can see the forest covered area. And you can pretty much play with this map yourself. But if you want to customize it further, or again, you want to merge it with your data, which is what we're going to learn now, you can download this data and bring it into My Maps. So the last tutorial for our nonprofit is, we know that we're running this campaign. We know that people are planting trees, and it's going really well. We want to know, are we actually prioritizing the right regions? Are we doing our tree plantation drives in areas where the forest cover is low, or there is this need for an intervention? For that, we actually need to have some authoritative data or some data from a source that's monitoring forest cover. And for that, we're going to head on over to data commons to actually bring in some official data. Okay, so we're going back to My Maps and creating a new map, which we call Program Impact. And we will go to Data Commons, Land Use and Coverage is the category. We're going to go to the sparse vegetation covered area. These are, basically lands with less than 10% of forested land, and we're going to click on download data as CSV, and it should pretty much download instantly. What we're going to do is we're going to import this data. So going to go to export. If you're unsure, the way that when you import data from an external source, you pretty much don't know what the data columns are going to be and what's going to be in this file. And if you've not seen it before, My Maps has this neat feature that allows you to preview the data in advance. So in this case, label is the states because we downloaded data for all of the states. Data actually gives the percentage of sparse vegetation cover in each of these regions. So what we're going to do is we're going to click label to position our place marks. And we're going to click on data to title. And that's it. But this isn't really helpful to us, right? It's just a bunch of place marks. We don't actually see the values. We don't see the state boundaries. We don't, this map makes pretty much no sense to us, right? So what we're going to do now to make this map more useful is we are going to download this KML file, which is the US state boundaries. And we're going to click on re-import and merge. we're going to click on merge matching items. And again, I don't know what any of these mean, so I am going to see what each of these tables is. Yeah. None of this makes sense. Okay. So name is something we have in common with our data set, and that's what we're going to use to match this. So I'm going to click on finish, and yeah, you have the data that we pulled from our data commons table matched with a KML file containing boundaries, and you have the new merged data set file available here. So some of the data is duplicated. You can see the label and name, they're both included because we merged the data set, we didn't update it. If you want to replace it, then you can avoid duplication. Another thing that we're going to do is we're going to group it by the data. And we're going to set a range so that we can actually see the spatial distribution as well. And we're going to change the transparency and the width so that we can see the data more clearly. Yeah, so you can pretty much say, and I think it's still syncing. Yeah. I don't know how that happened. Wow. Fun. It's the broken map. But yeah, basically you can see the regions with sparse vegetation, and you can see a nice sort of gradient map. I think not all of them have, yes. Okay, much better. Yeah, okay, awesome. So yeah, you can see a nice gradient between the regions as well, and you can, again, like sparse vegetation is one, you can use this for forest cover, you can use this for incidences of wildfires, you can pretty much style to see these different data patterns emerge, especially in like larger data sets where you have like clusters of data and you need to sort of group them by either values or by multiple choice. Let's say you have a form that has like 4 options and people have picked like trees versus shrubs versus flowering plants. You know, you can very easily categorize and like see these data patterns emerged on the map and sort of use it as a way to segment your data or quickly visualize your data. The last thing we're going to do is, because we ultimately want to see how our program is doing, we have a spreadsheet that collected like successful plantings for each state. We're going to import that spreadsheet and we're going to add a new layer. So you can add, you don't just have to merge layers to add multiple layers. You can actually import a new layer to basically overlay one data set on top of another without joining them. And they can be completely unrelated data sets as well. So let's click on impact. Let's click on state. Let's say, and this is basically a place mark, but again, what we're going to do is we're going to group these by the number of successful plantings. And you can also customize the ranges. So what this does, what MyMaps does usually is it breaks them down into buckets. But if you feel like this isn't large enough, you can actually change the bucket size so that you can have more data options, or you can have like more or smaller categories. We're going to change the color so that it's more clearly visible. And yeah, we can see that we're not doing a good job at prioritizing where our plantations happen, because if you see, these are the regions that basically need more attention because they have more sparse vegetation, but we're not prioritizing enough plantations in those regions. So we could do better to improve our coverage. Oh my God, I'm making this worse. Okay. But yeah, I would highly encourage exploring data commons. I will also just very quickly show you the data download tool that I was talking about, where you can enter a country. So you can enter United States. You can say you want data at the county level, and you can basically select what data you want. For example, for environment, because we were looking at land cover data, you can take the sparse vegetation area, which is the one that I downloaded. You can also add forest covered area. You can add shrub covered area. You can preview, and you can basically download. You can see what the data looks like before, and then you can go ahead and download it. So this is also another way to access data. They also have a spreadsheet plugin, so you can pretty much, you don't even have to download it from here. You can, it's a bit harder in that you need to be familiar with the variable names and you need to be familiar with the language, but the plugin allows you to directly pull in data into a spreadsheet as well if you prefer doing that. So yeah, that's how you integrate data from My Maps. We covered the tutorial. We basically covered how to re-import and merge. I would also recommend trying out some of the other features, which is updating or replacing items. Again, this is useful if you want to merge like 2 or more data sets. You can also try styling more and experimenting with different forms, or using a live form and bringing in new data every day to update your map. And yeah, that is pretty much it. I just wanted to point you to some additional tutorials and help pages. You can look at some advanced trainings on My Maps. There is one on data visualization, and then I mentioned how do you create a map out of photos using Google Photos. We also have a tutorial on that. So if you have, if you're on the agenda, the slides should be linked, and if you open the slides, you should have links to these tutorials. And we have time for questions, if there are any questions. Yes?
I think we went through how one can manually go and pull in and then re-update the data. Is there any way to say like refresh every 7 days? Or?
Unfortunately, no. That is a very commonly requested feature. That's the unfortunate part, that even if a form updates, the response is on its own and the spreadsheet updates, and even if your map is linked to a spreadsheet, you will have to re-upload the data, which is why some of these re-importing features come in handy, because your spreadsheet won't automatically link to the map. If the spreadsheet is updated, you will have to upload it again. So you can do this without having to lose all of the styling and doing all the steps again to group and cluster your data. Yeah.
I have 2 questions. If you go back to your map, there's a really long 10, 12 decimals there. Can you control that without changing your data, or do you have to create that or make that change in your spreadsheet?
Yeah, you have to. You have to change it on your spreadsheet. One thing I do want to try on the fly is to see if this works. I think this should work. Let's see. It was 0.43. Let me see which one I changed. What state was this? This was Alabama. Is anyone good at? Sorry, where? Okay. I am really bad at. Yeah, it's changed. Yeah, so that is one way. Let me show you again.
That'll reflect in the legend there if you go back and change.
Yeah, it will reflect, but then you have to change all of them. So because the other data are still in like these 12 decimal points. The other thing I was going to say is just if you want to manually edit the CSV data, but if you edit it here, it won't change your actual data file, like your Google Sheets file as well. So that is one way to just change the data for the sake of the My Map and not the map itself.
And then my other question is, are there plans to support other geospatial file formats like GeoJSON, GeoPackage, shapefile?
Not at the moment. I don't know if GeoJSON is supported. Let me check that once. Yeah, no. Yeah, there aren't any plans at the moment, but again, I think like last year we did introduce some features to add CSV exports and other like file formats. So yeah, maybe in the future. Yes.
Is there a way to put in some sort of color coding to show what changed? Like what was a blue state that became a red state, for example? Like a delta between a refresh, basically?
I think you could do it. Oh, you mean?
Like this was in the green the last time around.
Yeah.
Now it has suddenly become a yellow or suddenly it's become a red. Like any flags of sorts.
Yeah, it would have to be like either two data sets and like, yeah, you change between the layers manually or through the merging feature, you could add like a new column and you can merge the data set so it still retains like the old value with the timestamp, and then you can add the new value as a new attribute. Yeah, as a new column. Yes.
Suppose when we are importing data, we import it with images, and now when we are exporting it, will we get the image with the sheet? Like suppose we are exporting as CSV.
Yeah.
Right. So do we get the link of the image too, or do we have access to them?
It should link out as either a photos link or a drive link. It depends on how you, actually it should link out as a drive or a photos link if you just manually uploaded it. Or Justine, I don't know if you have a...
I know, but
Yeah.
I don't want to guess.
Yes.
You have any recommendations for kind of really good examples of this being used as sort of like a showcase of inspiration?
Yeah. So some of the examples here, we've actually seen a lot of maps used for crisis applications. So for example, there was an agency in Bihar, there were these really severe like disaster, really severe floods that happened. They used it as a way to highlight relief centers and sort of boats and emergency camps. The disaster minister sort of tweeted about it, and that's how like everybody found out like where they can get relief. So a lot of crisis use cases, again, like showing where like wildfire hotspots are. Also, like during COVID, a lot of folks just like showed up trying to add crowdsource like community information. This is a very cute example, but there was this story of a child who, during the lockdown, she couldn't go around much. So she would just have to go around in her neighborhood She couldn't go to parks because parks were closed. So they'd go around like sighting rainbows in people's houses, and this blew up, and people just created like a rainbow map of all the places where people had like rainbows hung up in their houses and their windows. So even fun stuff like that. I think even like a lot of travel planning on the personal front, we've seen a lot of users use My Maps for that. Yeah.
Is this replacement for the deprecated Maps engine? And if yes, will this be deprecated in the future?
I will say that I'm not super familiar with Map Engine because this was before my time on the team. I feel like My Maps has been around for much longer, so maybe the timelines overlapped. Yeah, I don't know how to answer that question because I'm not familiar with Maps Engine. Will this be deprecated? There aren't any plans as of now, so I would still continue using it. One thing we've been very mindful of is that even when deprecations happen, we try to bring some of those functionalities into our existing products so that users can still continue those workflows in similar environments and not be disrupted by the lack of access to tools. So I would, yeah, that's what I would say. Okay, I guess that's it for questions. 5 minutes left. Okay. Yeah, Justine, I don't know if you were able to find out how the export happens.
On a private map, and I didn't get any link. And I also haven't gotten a public one either, so I don't think so.
Yeah. Yeah, unfortunately. But we do know that I think if you, one of the ways that people like bringing in photos into My Maps is just by adding in like Drive links or Google Photos links. So that way, even if you take it out, like you still retain the links because that's how you uploaded it. So yeah, unfortunately, the manual upload doesn't give you links, sadly. But that's how I would do it if I were you. Just use Google Drive and insert those Drive links into your spreadsheet so that you can take it back. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I think that is pretty much it. If anyone has any other questions, I'm happy to stick around and answer. If not, yeah, I hope you walk away with a desire to try out My Maps and use it in your organization. It's a super easy tool. Honestly, just go home and play around with it. Check out some of the tutorials I mentioned if you want to learn some more.